Hi, my name is Jude. I'm 28 years old, and I used to believe that caution could shield me from almost anything. Bad investments, bad breaks, and definitely bad relationships. Quick checkpoint for you. Have you ever brushed off a tiny warning sign because the vibe felt too good to question? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and the little red flag you let slide. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it exploded later. I'm curious. People close to me joke that I came out of the womb clutching a user manual. I double knot my shoelaces. I read every service contract, and I once turned a road trip caravan around because I spotted a wobble in a friend's trailer tire. That's the kind of hypervigilant guy I am. High school buddies branded me Safety Jude. It stuck through college, through my first job hauling heavy solar panels onto blistering rooftops, and right up to the day I matched with Zara on a dating app called Hearth. To set the scene, it was a random Wednesday evening. I was scrolling in my apartment, blue light glasses on, screens everywhere, trying to unwind after wrangling invoices for my 3-year-old company, Sunspire Solutions. I nearly skipped her profile because her photos looked like something out of a travel magazine. Santorini sunsets, jazz bars in Lisbon, and that half-smile you see only on people who never fear being underdressed. She was absolutely out of my league, or so I thought, so clicking like felt more like a lottery ticket than a realistic move. 30 seconds later, we matched. Our first date was supposed to be a quick coffee at a riverside cafe. I geared up for the polite 30-minute farewell, the kind that ends with a crisp thank you and a disappearing act. Instead, coffee turned into lunch, lunch turned into walking the river trail, and at dusk we were still there, laughing about childhood Halloween disasters. I distinctly remember thinking, if she ghosts me after this, it'll still be worth it. I couldn't stop replaying her laugh in my mind, bright, almost musical, contagious. She texted before I even made it to my car. Same time next week. Safety Jude did a little cartwheel. From there, my famously slow relationship tempo crashed into overdrive. We were official in 2 months, sharing keys in 6 and fully moved in at 8. I ignored the little alarm bells that usually ping when I move too fast. Why? Because Zara radiated confidence. She could fold into any social circle as if she'd always belonged, and when she looked at me, I felt, no, I knew, I was enough. By the time our 1-year mark rolled around, she'd met my mom, learned to help me solder microinverters, and memorized my crew's coffee orders. She wore my old flannel around the apartment and hummed along to the indie playlists I used to guard like trade secrets. Those early months felt like a montage. Early morning drives to installation sites, late-night sushi on cardboard boxes because we couldn't afford a dining table yet, her perched on the roof handing me bolts while sunset wrapped us in gold. But here, where the story tilts. Zara's family operates on an entirely different grid. Her father, Alaric, heads Bastion Wealth, a regional financial advisory giant with tasteful brass signs outside its downtown tower. According to local business lore, Alaric never misses a tea time and never meets a stranger who isn't a potential client. He projects that bulletproof CEO charm, firm handshake, precisely graying temples, and a voice smooth enough to sell sunscreen in December. At first, I found him intimidating in the same way you feel small walking into a cathedral, more awe than anxiety. The awe faded the night he offered tipsy toasts over a core rib steak dinner. To Jude, he declared, clinking crystal, the young man who climbs roofs so my daughter doesn't have to. Everyone laughed except me, but maybe I was too sensitive. After all, he wrote the check for dinner. Still, little digs kept slipping out. How's the weather up there on the shingles? Solar, that's cute, these trends do come and go. He said these things with a friendly wink, yet each jab lodged under my skin like a splinter. Zara would squeeze my knee beneath the linen-draped table and whisper, ignore him, love. He just doesn't understand entrepreneurship outside of Wall Street. She'd switch the conversation to vacation stories, flash that megawatt smile, and suddenly the room felt lighter. I decided she was right. I told myself I wasn't marrying Alaric. I was marrying Zara. When I finally proposed, I did it on her favorite overlook, a rocky cliff that splits 2 canyons in a state park about an hour outside the city. I hiked her there before sunrise. She wore my college hoodie and carried a thermos of burnt diner coffee, still managing to look like a magazine cover. As the first light leaked over the ridgeline, I knelt with my grandmother's rose gold ring, hands trembling, voice cracking. She burst into tears, nodded yes before I finished the question, and the handful of early bird hikers nearby erupted in applause. A stranger snapped photos that are now printed on cheap pharmacy paper and stuck to my fridge, forever proof that a cautious man can take a leap and land on something beautiful. After that, wedding machinery revved up fast. Zara's mother, Lilith, booked the ballroom at Heritage Oaks Country Club for an engagement party big enough to host an awards gala. Lush lawns, white-glove servers, the works. I tried to pay half. Alaric waved me off. "Consider it an investment in family," he said, marking his words with a lingering pat on my shoulder, as if testing whether the fabric of my thrift store blazer would hold. The day of the party arrived on one of those early spring Saturdays when the air smells like fresh paint. I spent the morning coaxing my hair into something respectable, polishing the scuffs off my best shoes, and triple-checking the slideshow that would run on the big screen. Photos of our road trips, rooftop selfies, and yes, that sunrise proposal. Stepping onto the club's marble floors felt like walking into somebody else's dream. White hydrangeas spilled out of silver urns, a trio played soft jazz near the picture windows, and tiny lights strung overhead made everything glimmer. Zara floated through the room in an emerald silk dress that hugged her shoulders and cascaded to the floor, cheeks glowing with that natural high people get when every eye in the room points their way. Seeing her sparkle that hard made my chest swell. This is it, I thought. This is the moment everyone will talk about for years. I shook hands with cousins whose names I promptly forgot, thanked family friends for traveling, and tried not to cringe every time Alaric introduced me as the solar guy instead of Zara's fiancé. Maybe I imagined the slight. Maybe the champagne flutes and string bass drowned out his tone. Either way, I smoothed my tie, wrapped an arm around Zara's waist, and inhaled the freesia scent she always wore. When she leaned into me and whispered, "Everything's perfect," I believed her. Yet there were faint ripples in the glass. First, I noticed Zara's phone lighting up again and again. She'd glance at the screen, thumb a quick reply, and slip it back into her clutch. Second, I caught her scanning the entrance every few minutes like she was expecting a late arrival. I chalked it up to nerves. Big parties do that. But a prickle crawled up my spine whenever her gaze flicked that way. Then halfway through the evening, I heard my nickname echo across the bar. "Safety, Jude." It was Kellen, my oldest friend, grinning as he wove through clusters of guests with 2 bourbon glasses. "Man, you clean up all right," he said, clinking his glass to mine. "You realize this shindig has better hors d'oeuvres than our prom." We laughed about corsage disasters and slipknot bow ties until he lowered his voice. "You good? You look wired." I shrugged, just taking it all in. Kellen raised an eyebrow. "Translation, you're scanning for loose carpeting and overloaded circuits," breathed Jude. He was right. I felt like a firefighter at a fireworks festival. Part of me wanted to relax, but the risk assessment algorithms in my brain kept whirring. A lesson hit me right then. You can armor yourself with caution, but love has a sneaky way of slipping past the guardrails. Sometimes that's wonderful, like letting someone new hold the map for a change. And sometimes it's dangerous because you no longer trust your own alarms. Have you ever tasted that bittersweet mix, where excitement and unease stand shoulder to shoulder? Think on it for a second. Just as I pushed the thought away and raised my glass for another sip, the main doors swung wider and a tall silhouette stepped in, broad shoulders, immaculate suit, hair so perfect it could have been measured with a ruler. Zara's head snapped up. She straightened, smoothed her dress, and maybe it was my imagination, touched her lips as if checking her lipstick. "Who's that?" I asked, already knowing the answer in my gut. Kellen followed my line of sight. "No clue, but he looks like money." The stranger handed his coat to a staff member and scanned the room with the easy confidence of someone who'd been here 100 times. When his gaze found Zara across the crowd, he smiled, a quick, private smile that felt like a whispered inside joke. Something clenched in my stomach. I wasn't the possessive type, but there it was, a flash of doubt, a hairline crack running through the evening's perfection. Zara's fingers tightened around my arm. "Let's make the rounds," she said brightly, steering us away before I could ask a single question. And because Safety Jude was busy trying to be graceful Jude, I let her. I didn't know it yet, but that casual smile from the doorway was the opening note of a song that was about to shred every safe plan I'd ever made. I remember the exact moment the music faded, even though the band kept playing. One second I was drifting through clinking glasses and soft saxophone, the next everything shrank to a narrow hallway behind the ballroom. Carpet muffled my shoes, sconces threw warm light against paneled walls, and somewhere close by a coachroom door clicked shut. I'd been looking for Zara because a photographer wanted a posed shot in front of the ice sculpture. 5 minutes passed, then 10, and she was nowhere on the dance floor. My nerves hummed louder than the jazz. I checked the powder room foyer, the patio strung with fairy lights, even the kitchen pass-through where servers hustled trays of crab cakes. Nothing. That hallway was my last unchecked box. Halfway down, I heard hushed voices, hers low and familiar, his deeper confident. I stepped around a bend and saw them. Zara leaned against the carved oak doorframe, emerald silk draping like liquid emerald. Darian's hand rested just above her hip, thumb grazing fabric as if he'd memorized the curve years ago. Their faces were inches apart when I froze, and then with a tiny tilt of her chin, she kissed him. It wasn't clumsy or accidental. It was the kiss of people returning to old muscle memory. A strange stillness settled over me. I didn't drop my glass or shout or rush forward. I just watched, heartbeat thudding in my ears, as if I'd slipped behind a movie screen and couldn't rejoin the audience. Darian noticed first. He eased back, smoothing his tie with practiced cool. When Zara turned, annoyance flashed before surprise. She sighed like I'd interrupted her mid-parameter in some important calculus problem. "Jude, don't overreact," she said, lips still glossy. My voice felt far away. Overreact to what exactly? "It was a goodbye kiss," she replied, brushing invisible lint from his lapel. "We have history, it's not a big deal." Darian shoved both hands into his pockets, doing that half-smile Wall Street guys learn in expensive networking seminars. "Yeah, man, just nostalgia. Congratulations on the engagement, by the way." Something icy slid into place inside me. Not rage, clarity. For the first time in my hyper-cautious life, every sensor lit up at once and said, "Move." I set my glass on the windowsill, nodded once, and turned. "Jude," Zara called after me, a command more than a plea. "Do not create a scene." Her words floated down the hall while I walked the length of marble, past a shocked server, through double doors and out into night air that tasted like rain. My coat was still on a brass hook, but I didn't feel the chill crossing the parking lot. Keys fumbled into ignition, engine growled awake, and only then did I notice my phone pulsing nonstop. Zara, Alaric, unknown numbers that had to be her cousins. I powered it off. A question for anyone who's ever had their moment of truth. If your dignity costs one silent exit, do you pay it on the spot or haggle for comfort? Let me know, no judgment either way. Some people need closure, some need distance. I was suddenly fluent in distance. I drove aimlessly, headlights carving tunnels through empty streets. Around midnight, muscle memory steered me to Kellen's apartment complex, a brick walk-up stacked like shoeboxes. He answered wearing basketball shorts and a headset mid-video game. One look at my face and he pulled me inside without a word. We ended up on his tiny balcony, city lights flickering below. I told him everything while condensation dripped off two cheap loggers. "Dude," he said when I finished, "I've seen warehouse fires start slower than that." I managed a dry laugh. Then, because I'm me, I dissected every frame, the angle of Darian's hand, the flash of Zara's annoyance, the way my own body felt both weightless and anchored. Kellen listened, only interrupting to hand me another beer or nod like an amen at church. Finally, he asked, "So what's the plan?" "I can't marry someone who calls fidelity insecurity," I said. "You sure you don't want to cool off first?" I shook my head. "I cooled off all the way home, there's nothing left but facts." Kellen patted the sagging couch in his spare room. "Crash here as long as you need, sheets are probably clean." I slept in my dress pants, jacket folded over my chest like a shield. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw that hallway, but instead of pain, I felt relief growing like dawn. When sunlight dragged me awake, I powered on my phone. 93 messages queued up like angry bees. Zara's texts dashed from "Where did you go?" to "You're humiliating me to please talk to me, I'm scared." Alaric's voicemail started polished and slid toward threatening. In one, he scolded, "Adults discuss problems, they don't disappear." In another, he suggested I apologize for startling the guests. I pictured his tailored suit, his glass of single malt, and wondered if he'd ever apologize to a roofing apprentice he'd insulted. Probably not. I silenced the phone again and let Kellen's apartment settle around me. The faint smell of burnt coffee, distant traffic, an aging Labrador snoring in the next unit. For the first time in 2 years, I felt no urge to check Zara's schedule, no need to match her stride. The quiet tasted like freedom. By mid-afternoon, I'd made up my mind. I texted my site foreman, Mason, asked if he could swing by with his truck. He answered, "On my way," like a true ride or die. Before we left, I told Kellen, "I'm going to pack essentials." He handed me a roll of trash bags and a look that said he'd stand in front of a bulldozer if required. Traffic crawled as we headed to the apartment Zara and I shared. I rehearsed possibilities. Maybe she'd still be at brunch with her mother, maybe she'd be waiting in the doorway with tear-streaked cheeks, maybe the locks would be changed. None of that mattered. My goal was simple: retrieve what I needed to keep living, work files, backup drives, my grandfather's watch, and the ring I'd given her. That last item deserved a careful goodbye. The building echoed when we stepped inside, our footsteps swallowed by high ceilings. I unlocked the door. The place smelled of vanilla candles and expensive fabric softener. Zara wasn't home. Her side of the vanity brimmed with makeup palettes like nothing catastrophic had happened 12 hours earlier. In 30 minutes, I stuffed clothes, tools, and keepsakes into boxes. Mason moved with quiet efficiency. He didn't ask questions, just taped lids and carried them to the elevator. Last, I opened the small wooden box where we kept the ring when Zara cooked or painted her nails. Rose gold glinted under LED lamps. I turned it in my palm, remembering my grandmother's steady hands threading it onto my necklace the day she died. She told me, "Give this only to the one who guards your peace." I set the ring on the kitchen island beside a blank sheet of notepaper. Pen hovered while I searched for a line that could summarize betrayal without sounding theatrical. I wrote 2 words: unkept promise. We slid boxes into Mason's truck bed. As we slammed the tailgate, Zara's blue coupe screeched around the corner. She stepped out, hair undone, eyes rimmed red. "Jude, what are you doing?" she asked, voice cracking between anger and panic. "Collecting my life," I said. "You can't just leave. We need to talk to Father Rutherford, to my parents." I raised a hand. "You kissed someone else at our party. Any explanation past that point is spin." It was a moment. Her eyes darted to Mason like recruiting a referee. "A blip. You're blowing months, years of love over a blip. If love requires me to swallow humiliation, we define the word differently." She shook her head, tears tipping over. "You think you're so noble, but you're just scared of messy feelings." "That's your story to tell," I said. "Mine is already written." Mason cleared his throat, gently steering me toward the driver's door. We pulled away with Zara's silhouette shrinking in the mirror, arms wrapped around herself on the curb. Back at Kellen's place, we shared cold pizza and silence. Eventually he asked, "Regrets?" "Only that I didn't see it sooner," I answered, surprising myself with the calmness of the truth. "Here's the takeaway I promised. Sometimes the bravest act isn't fighting for something that broke. It's refusing to fight because your dignity outranks your fear of starting over." I'd built Sunspire from 2 maxed-out credit cards and a rented toolbox. Starting over wasn't foreign territory, it was home turf. Night settled, and with it came the what-ifs, the mental courtroom where every decision is cross-examined. I remembered Zara belittling my work clothes, insisting I buy a new truck to look successful, pushing me to chase bigger clients before my cash flow could support extra crews. Every jab I'd laughed off suddenly lined up like breadcrumbs leading to this hallway moment. I ask you, have you ever replayed tiny comments only to realize they formed a clear sentence all along? Tell me which remark finally snapped into focus for you. Mine was Zara joking that I was 1 step up from a handyman. It had stung then, but now it felt prophetic. About midnight, my phone buzzed from the coffee table. I'd forgot to silence it again. Alaric's number lit the screen. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity poked, so I listened. "Jude, this is Alaric." His tone was steady ice. "I understand you're upset, but abandoning Zara is unacceptable. Call me by 9 a.m. so we can repair this before gossip spreads. Family reputation is at stake." I deleted the message and lay back, staring at the cracked ceiling paint. Family reputation, not daughter's heart or fiancé's feelings, stock price dressed in silk. Suddenly, his dinner table digs made sense. They were preemptive reminders of his leverage. That realization was both sobering and empowering. If his currency was image, my silence was worth more than any apology. Morning came with a drizzle tapping the window. I brewed hotel room strength coffee in Kellen's ancient machine and tasted bitter freedom. I drafted an email to our wedding vendors, subject line cancellation, and watched deposits evaporate like dew. A small price for a large escape. Before hitting send, I paused and whispered a thanks to Caution, which had finally turned its alarm volume back up, and to that hallway, unromantic and badly lit, for showing what polished conversation had hidden. Next on the docket, finding an apartment, shoring up my business, and bracing for whatever cards Alaric planned to play. But that's a story for another evening. Walking out in silence turned out to be the loudest statement I've ever made. I spent the next 48 hours living on burnt coffee and adrenaline, a strange cocktail that sharpens your senses while blunting your emotions. With every vendor I called to cancel, I felt lighter and poorer in equal measure. Refundable cake tastings, non-refundable string quartet deposits, all of it evaporating like steam. By Tuesday afternoon, I'd emptied the joint savings account Zara, and I kept for wedding expenses, wiring my half into a brand new bank under my own name. If she deemed that petty, so be it. I'd already learned that silence sometimes roars louder than speeches, but safeguarding your future speaks loudest of all. Early Wednesday, while I was wrestling a balky inverter onto a suburban rooftop, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost let it roll to voicemail, but some quiet instinct made me tap accept. "Hi, is this Jude?" The voice was soft, uncertain. "My name is Nina. You don't know me, but we should probably talk." I climbed down the ladder, boots crunching gravel, and ducked behind the customer's garage for privacy. "I'm listening." She released a shaky breath. "I'm Darian's girlfriend. I found messages between him and Zara, hotel confirmations, private jokes, stuff no one writes by accident." Her tone wavered, equal parts embarrassment and fury. "I thought you deserved proof." A jolt of cold ran through me, confirmation, not surprise. "You have the screenshots." "They're in your inbox already. Subject line, receipts." "Check the dates." Her voice steadied. "I'm sorry our lives intersect this way. For what it's worth, you got out sooner than I did." I thanked her, promised I'd handle the information carefully, and hung up. Back on the roof, I felt the morning sun beating down, hot but ineffective against a deeper chill spreading through my chest. That evening, I opened the email on Kellen's ancient laptop. Nina's attachments were meticulous, message threads stretching back 4 months, Darian's name peppered with inside jokes, Zara's replies bubbled in green. One line stabbed hardest, Zara texting, "Jude's contractor contacts are gold. Once my design brand launches, we'll leverage them, then figure us out." Leverage, figure us out. I might have laughed if it hadn't tasted like rust. I forwarded the file to myself, encrypted, then closed the laptop with more calm than I felt. I wasn't surprised anymore, just clarified like glass pulled from a kiln. My next move mattered. "A question for you. When betrayal graduates from rumor to proof, do you confront or conserve your energy? Share below. There's no right answer, only the one that preserves your peace." The decision was made for me sooner than expected. At 9 the next morning, my supplier rep, Trey, called. "Hey, man, everything okay? We just got an inquiry from Bastion Wealth about your credit terms. Odd, right? They don't usually meddle in supplier financing." Alaric, the name pulsed like neon behind my eyes. He'd moved from guilt trips to guerrilla tactics. "I'm fine," I told Trey. "If anything changes on your end, let me know before you sign paperwork. I'll cover cash if I have to." "Got it," he said, lowered voice implying we were both stepping around something rotten. 5 minutes later, my phone lit up with Alaric's number. I answered. Time to stop letting other people write the narrative. "Jude," he began, warm as a silk scarf. "Glad we're finally speaking man-to-man. Zara's distraught, but we can pull this back from the brink." "In what universe?" I asked. "In the one where we act like adults," he sniffed, as if business deals carried a scent. "I know you're passionate, but passion shouldn't destroy opportunity. Bastion Wealth advises several green energy investors. Imagine the doors I could open for Sunspire, larger projects, faster capital, membership in the right circles." "And the price tag?" "A cooling-off period. Postpone the wedding 6 months, attend counseling, let rumors die. After that, you can revisit the engagement or part amicably. Meanwhile, I'll steer premium clients your way." He made it sound benevolent, but every syllable dripped conditional kindness. "So I pretend nothing happened. You get your picture-perfect family narrative while regulators snoop around your firm, and I get to kneel on broken glass for half a year." His pause was brief, practiced. "Careful, Jude. Sentiment shouldn't sabotage your company's trajectory. Solar's competitive, 1 bad quarter." "You tank my supplier credit." "I'm simply pointing out realities," he said smoothly. I remembered him clinking crystal, calling my career cute. Now the velvet gloves were off, but the manicure underneath was just as careful. An odd calm settled over me, maybe because I finally saw the full map instead of tiny, isolated red flags. "I appreciate the offer," I said, voice steady, "but my dignity isn't up for auction. Threaten whatever you like, I'll build elsewhere. He exhaled through his nose, a tiny bull snort. Stubbornness is costly, think about your employees. Click, I ended the call before he could weaponize their names. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the raw charge of choosing principle over payoff. Lesson break, almost everything valuable in life tests for an asking price. Your time, your skills, your silence. Decide in advance which items are simply not for sale. You'll save yourself a bidding war later. That afternoon, I drove to the wholesale yard and shook every supplier's hand in person. I laid out the situation in plain English. No skeletons, just facts. Most reps respected the transparency. A few quietly enjoyed the gossip. 2 offered extended net 60 terms based on my clean payment record. Alaric's shadow shrank to mortal size once exposed to daylight. On my way back, a text popped from an old college friend, Rogue, now a journalist for the regional business ledger. Rumor mill says Bastion facing state audit. Anything you know? I asked her what she'd heard. She replied, client funds misallocated, hush-hush, might break publicly next quarter. Suddenly, Alaric's desperation made financial sense. He didn't want a son-in-law, he needed a PR lifeboat. That night, Kellen and I sat on milk crates in my bare new apartment, pizza boxes between us like makeshift furniture. I told him everything. Nina's evidence, Alaric's bribery, the looming investigation. Kellen whistled low. Corporate soap opera, what's your next move? Stay quiet, stay steady, I said. Let their own mess spill. He nodded, wiped sauce off his chin. And if they come harder? I'll do what solar guys do, I said, surprising myself with a grin. Harness what's already shining and turn it into power. We shared the kind of laugh that only comes when the worst plot twist has already landed, and you've lived through the scene. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again, this time Sienna, one of Zara's bridesmaids. Call me, you need to know what she's saying about you. I reluctantly dialed. Sienna's voice arrived in a rush. She's planning a freedom party Friday, telling people you were controlling, jealous, even violent. She invited everyone, including my ex who can't keep quiet. You should see the flyer, champagne emoji, better off without him. I let the words sink in. Part of me wanted to print that flyer and staple it to Alaric's country club notice board. The larger part just felt tired. But indignation has uses. It converts fear into clarity, hesitation into fuel. Thanks for the heads up, I told Sienna. Will you email me the invite? Already did, she said. Look, I'm sorry, I didn't sign up for this drama. No apology needed, I said. You just helped me connect a lot of dots. After we hung up, I forwarded the invitation to Alaric with no message. Let the image speak. A daughter in sequined freedom pose, Darian tagged as VIP guest. I barely had time to drop my phone before it buzzed with his return call. I let it ring out. Then a voicemail came, voice tight as cello wire. Jude, what is this? Call me. I didn't. Reflection time. Have you ever realized someone cared more about appearances than relationships? When did you see the mask slip? Post the moment if you dare. Friday rolled in stormy, thunder distant but constant. I spent the evening installing backup batteries in a client's detached garage, rain drumming the roof. Around 10, Sienna texted a play-by-play. Alaric crashing the freedom party, Zara screaming, Darian slinking off when credit cards were cut. It read like tabloid prose. Somewhere between worthless parasite and ungrateful child, I stopped reading. Instead, I revisited Nina's screenshots one last time, not for pain, but for perspective. Betrayal thrives in darkness. Once lit, it loses its teeth. I saved them to an encrypted drive, then deleted the email, evidence preserved, obsession discarded. On Sunday, Trey from the supply yard called. Good news, we're expanding your credit line anyway. Your numbers check out, and one of our execs saw your home energy seminar last month. Impressive stuff. I stared out my apartment's lone window, rain-clean sky glowing pink. Alaric's long arm hadn't reached as far as he'd promised. Maybe karma worked quicker when pride greased the gears. Or maybe showing up, day in and day out, still counts for something in business. Either way, my company lived to see another quarter. I drove to the office yard, unlocked the chain-link gate, and stood among stacked pallets of panels catching the last of sunset. The metallic smell of aluminum mixed with dried timber and possibility. For the first time in weeks, my thoughts weren't framing defenses. They were sketching new arrays, exploring grants for low-income housing, picturing roofs yet unlit. When I climbed back into the truck, I recorded a voice memo. Maybe I'll turn it into a podcast someday. You can't scheme the sun into rising. You can only decide what you'll power when it does. Integrity isn't leverage, it's infrastructure. Build it first because storms will come. I hit save, engine thrumming beneath me. The road home stretched wide and clear. Before I pulled away, I asked myself, and I ask you now, what part of your life needs structural honesty before the next storm hits? Leave a comment. Your story might be the lesson someone else needs. I shifted into drive and rolled toward a tomorrow bright enough for anyone who chooses not to dim themselves for borrowed light. I woke on Saturday to the hush that follows a summer storm, pavement still slick, birds negotiating new puddles, the smell of clean asphalt wafting up through my cracked window. You know that after-rain calm when the city feels like it pressed a reset button overnight. That's where this story finds its landing strip. While I brewed coffee in my nearly empty kitchen, still just a folding table and two mismatched stools, I scrolled the local news. There it was in black and white. Bastion Wealth under state investigation for misuse of client funds. The article quoted anonymous insiders, hinted at frozen accounts, and ran a glossy photo of Alaric exiting the courthouse, jaw set like a man biting tinfoil. I let out a low whistle. Actions have consequences. Sometimes they just need a little time to catch up. Before I could finish my mug, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. A polite voice introduced herself as Claire, an investigator from the State Securities Commission. She'd found my name in Bastion's internal emails. They'd flagged me as a potential in-law with solar industry connections. Could we schedule a statement? I set the coffee down, steadying my voice. We arranged to meet Monday at their downtown office. Funny how ducking one marriage proposal landed me in a financial inquiry instead. By noon I was on a roof again, tightening flashings under hard blue sky. Physical work has its own kind of therapy. Wrench clicks, beads of sweat, the steady logic of torque. Up there, drama shrinks to manageable size. Mid-install, I glanced at my crew guys laughing over a shared playlist and felt something expand in my chest, a sudden certainty that whatever storm blew next, we'd anchor through it. During lunch break, Mason tapped my shoulder. "Dude, this just hit." He held out his phone. A video from Zara's Freedom Party was splashed across a gossip blog. Grainy footage showed Alaric barging onto the dance floor, shouting, "You think this is how adults behave?" Zara screeched back. Drayden tried to slither sideways, and security escorted them all outside. The comments were savage. Rich girl meltdown, daddy's credit card declined, cheaters eating humble pie. I scrolled, half guilty, half vindicated. Here's a quick pulse check for you. Have you ever watched karma loop back so perfectly it felt scripted? Drop the story in the comments. No names needed, just the plot twist. We wrapped the install near sunset. As I loaded the last ladder, my inbox pinged again, another unknown address. Subject line, "You probably deserve this." Against better judgment, I opened it. A single paragraph from Zara read, "Jude. Dad cut me off, Drayden dumped me, the press is circling. I see now the life we planned was the only honest thing in my world. If you can forgive me, please call. I'm at Mom's." I stared until the screen dimmed. Forgive? I could forgive, sure. Forget? That was a taller order. Real healing sometimes means closing the gate, not reopening it. I flagged the email read, then archived it. Not out of spite, simply to keep the past from tripping my present. Sunday, I did something I'd postponed for months. I hiked the ridge where I'd proposed. Alone this time, backpack loaded with 2 sandwiches and 0 expectations. Reaching the overlook, I sat on the warm granite and watched shades of orange unroll across sky. A new question nudged me. What if that sunrise proposal wasn't the climax but the setup? Sometimes we mislabel pivotal scenes because we're too close to the real. On the hike down, a German shepherd bounded past me, leash trailing. A woman chased after, laughing and winded. She managed to snag the clip just before the dog nosed my backpack. "Sorry," she puffed, then she blinked. "Jude," I did a double-take echo, an acquaintance from an energy conference happy hour months back. She lived 2 states away then. Turned out she'd relocated for a renewables startup. We chatted all the way to the trailhead, trading cliff notes on blistered heels and business hurdles. Before parting, she said, "Grab coffee later this week. I'd love to pick your brain about residential installs." Her tone carried no subtext, just genuine curiosity. I realized how refreshing that felt, interest with no hidden invoice. Monday's meeting at the securities office was anticlimactic. I handed over emails, explained Alaric's attempted leverage, watched a stern woman type notes while a wall clock ticked. Walking out, I felt strangely weightless. I'd provided facts, nothing more. Their mess was theirs to scrub. By midweek, my phone rang with Trey from the supplier yard again, excitement buzzing. A nonprofit landed a grant to solarize 10 low-income duplexes. They need bids, and the board chair asked specifically for you, said she caught your workshop on Community Solar last year. Perfect timing. I set up a site visit for Friday. Still, one loose thread tugged my sleeve. The ring. Grandma's rose gold circle sat in my desk drawer like a quiet question. On Wednesday night, I drove to my mother's house, the place where night lights still smell of peppermint oil and nostalgia clings like wallpaper. We sat at the kitchen island while rain rattled the gutters. "You heard about Bastion?" she asked, handing me chamomile. "Everyone has." She studied my face. "And Zara?" I shrugged. "She wants forgiveness." Mom stirred her tea, clinking spoon to porcelain. "Forgiving frees you, trusting again, that's optional." I fished the velvet box from my pocket and placed it on the counter. "I want this reset in its original setting. Maybe one day it'll fit a story that lasts." Mom's eyes glistened as she snapped the lid shut. "Grandma would be proud you kept its meaning." Thursday brought a different kind of ring, my apartment buzzer. Kellen stood there with a thrift store lamp, a housewarming gift resembling a lunar lander. "Figured you needed more light," he grinned. We assembled it in my living room corner while the dog-eared Freedom Party magazine article peeked out from his backpack. "Frame it," he joked. I shook my head. No walls for old news. That evening, Echo texted a doodle of solar roofs she'd sketched on a napkin. "Coffee tomorrow morning. I'll trade you this masterpiece for engineering advice." The casualness felt right. I replied, 8 a.m. copper cup. Over lattes, we talked panel orientation, but conversation detoured to road trip playlists and accidental successes. When I mentioned surviving a broken engagement, she didn't flinch or pry. She offered a toast to pivoting toward brighter arrays. Simple, respectful. As we parted, I felt the rare ease of meeting someone who views you as whole right now, not as clay to be molded. Friday's nonprofit walkthrough was a shot of pure purpose. Families waving from porches, kids peeking out windows at the drone we used to map the roofs. One little girl asked if we were putting sunshine on the houses. Her phrase stuck with me. On the drive back, Mason said, "Boss, I like this chapter, feels bigger." I smiled because he was right. The scale of service had grown alongside the business. That night, scrolling headlines before bed, I saw a blurb. "Zara Bennett sells designer wardrobe online to fund move," source says. There was a Fode, her clutching garment bags outside her mother's condo, expression hard to read. I exhaled. Pity mingled with distance. We'd become side characters in each other's epilogue, and that was okay. Reflection checkpoint. Have you ever released resentment only to find sympathy waiting on the other side? If yes, what did that shift unlock for you? Share. It might help someone still in the thick of it. Saturday morning dawned clear. I strapped my ladder to the truck for the nonprofit's first install. As the engine turned over, my phone buzzed. A single line from the investigator. "Thank you for your cooperation. Your statement was invaluable." Closure, stamped and filed. I pulled onto the main road, sun cresting the skyline, and felt a familiar flutter. Not anxiety, anticipation. My company's name on the truck door looked brighter than before, maybe because I stopped trying to polish it for someone who saw it as a placeholder. I turned the radio up, static resolving into a new song I didn't recognize but instantly liked. Halfway to the site, I caught my own reflection in the rear view, laugh lines deeper, eyes steadier. I spoke out loud, a habit picked up from long solo drives. "Safety, Jude, you did all right." Then I laughed because it sounded more like gratitude than self-talk. I'll close with this. Life doesn't always reward the cautious or the reckless. It rewards the resilient. The ones who can scan a damaged shingle, patch it, and still believe the roof will hold. The ones who walk out quietly when staying means betraying themselves. And the ones who keep space in their pocket for a ring or a blueprint or a dog-eared napkin sketch of the next big idea. So I'll pose one last question, maybe the most important of my whole saga. Where do you need to walk away so something better can walk in? Comment below. Your moment of release could be the sunrise someone else is waiting to see. I shifted gears, rolled toward that cul-de-sac of duplexes, and watched the morning light slide across rows of rooftops just waiting to catch some sunshine. Resilience, like solar power, is everywhere once you learn to tap it, and I was ready to wire it up for good.